Awesome.
And you guys ready to go?
And in case my breathing comes in the headphones, right? Just let me know because I'll then stop. I'll probably move the mic and let you guys talk. But since you're a consultant and you've been in consultancy for a very long time, right, Zeeshan? And same for you, Meg. You started as a consultant.
No.
No?
No.
So,
No, what
but
the heck?
wait, you said you had some like experience in consultancy,
No.
right? Okay, no matter. Okay, if you don't have, like, then I have amazing jokes for you. Maybe probably you will relate to it. Okay, so and then try to answer if you can answer this. So how many consultants does it take to screw in a light bulb? I have the answer. I'm not sure, but I'll have an answer for you next Monday.
There you go. I like it.
Oh, I was gonna say a random number, but that's it.
No, but that is a classic consultant response, right? And that's what they train you, is to say, never say I don't know.
Really?
It's always I'll get back to you, because I mean you don't ever know every answer, right?
Another joke that I have for you is, and this is something which you'll be able to relate to because you have known and you've been in a relationship with a person who works in medical industry, right? So who is the coolest doctor in the hospital?
The nurse.
No, a hip consultant.
What?
Oh, like the hip.
A hip consultant. A hippie consultant. But the reason I'm giving consultant jokes today is because the guest that I have with me is an amazing person. He has been in consultancy, especially supply chain consultancy, for about almost a decade, I say. But yeah, currently he's a director of supply chain consultancy in entity data. And
What
wait,
entity?
and now that I say it outright, right, entity data, it makes a lot of sense. Do you know what entity is? Entity, I feel, is a word play in the word called entity. Entity is like an object, but we can have this discussion later. But welcome to the show, Golan's Garage, where we talk about facts and feelings. And as I mentioned, right, the guest of honor today is the director of consultancy in entity data, Mr. Zeeshan Hooda. Yay! And also,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, it's all, the pleasure is all mine. But also a fun fact: Zeeshan Hooda is related to one of the co-hosts as well.
Hello.
Mehak Hooda's back on the show finally.
I'm back. I haven't been back since episode 2, but I'm back, and I also did my own episode. But yes, I'm back.
But she's back, and her episode is going to come out later after this. Even though we shot before this, but like she had some constraints, quote unquote, which you'll get to know. But Zeeshan, it's amazing to have you on the show. The first question to begin off, right? I want to ask you, director of consultancy, is that your role, or are you a director of something in entity?
No, so I am a director of the supply chain practice.
Okay. And what does it, so in my opinion, right, you become a director only if you're super amazing at your role, or you've spent a lot of years in your role, plus you've shown how, like, some impact on your role as well, right? So you've been in the supply chain consultancy world for how many years, and like how did you get to a director? Can you like tell the people who are watching this, like, what your journey has been in the professional world as of now?
Yeah, so my journey started right out of school, right? 2012 is when I started working. So I started working as an expediter in procurement for a chemical company. Did that for about a year and a half, and then they started implementing SAP. Right, so they had a big, Deloitte Consulting come in. It was a 3-year global implementation.
SAP is the company, right? Like
SAP is so basically you've got Oracle,
okay,
and so you've got SAP.
It has a conglomerate of all the products which are used in like supply chain and other logistic operations, right?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So big ERP software, right?
Okay.
So they started this global, 3-year implementation project, and so I fought my way to get onto that project. Initially more in the procurement space, and then I branched out to more of the supply chain space. I spent about 3 years doing that, traveled the globe, right, and really wasn't a consultant, but really understood the mindset and the role of a consultant.
Nice.
Okay. So what exactly is a consultant? Because for me, right, like I've heard about like TCS consultancy, Accenture, and so many companies, and like people keep saying that, hey, we need to hire consultants. But what does a consultant do? Because I don't understand the mindset or like why the need for a consultant is. So can you shed some light into what a consultant does? How and why a consultant is important to a company, or why do different companies hire consultancies? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so basically consultants, right, are really experts in a specific area, right? So if you take SAP consulting, companies hire us, Accenture, Deloitte, if they want to implement a new SAP system, right? If
Okay.
they want to upgrade. And so they bring in consultants who are experts in moving them from an old to a new system. So it's usually a year, 2-year time frame where they need expertise, people who know SAP.
In a niche area, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. But it's bringing someone in that, usually companies themselves don't have that expertise.
Okay.
So it's bridging a gap, a short-term gap, to get them from point A to point B.
Okay, but here's my question. Like, if you say, suppose I start a new company called XYZ, or say, suppose Golan's Garage itself, right? I start my own company, and I need expertise on an area which I don't have any idea about. Doesn't it make sense for me to hire that person, have him or her do all the work, and keep them as well in terms of maintenance comes along? Like, why are consultants needed in the world of in a world of our ecosystem of people where there are already experts in a particular area or a field as well?
So, like, if you look at a consulting company, there's different branches of a consulting company, right? So, like my company as well. You've got the consulting arm, and then you've got the support arm.
Okay.
So when we sell deals, you've got the consulting arm that comes in, right? They've got it's really a short-term need, right?
Okay.
You don't need a consultant like me after you've implemented and gone live,
Okay.
right?
And a lot of times those implementations are once every so many years, right? So
Maybe
you don't need
sometimes
it
once, and that's it,
in
right?
your lifetime.
In the life cycle? Oh,
Yeah,
really?
exactly. Once you
Oh.
put in your SAP system, that's it,
Okay.
It
right?
stays.
Unless you want to move to a new SAP system, or if you're moving away from SAP.
Okay.
So it's like a short-term need. You don't need staff that can do what we do, right? Because
Okay.
we come in, do something, move on, right? But then there are consulting companies, Deloitte's, Accenture's, right? Everyone still has not a consulting arm, but it's called an AMS arm,
Okay.
which is application management support. They will come in after we've implemented and taken you live.
Uh-huh.
They will support your system.
Oh.
For a long time.
And they will support your system for 3, 5, 10, 20 years.
Okay, so it's a license deal?
It's a license deal. It's a contractual license
Yeah.
deal. But then they provide basically ticket support, right? So
Okay.
then you've got some in-house support, but where you really need help, you submit a ticket and it goes through, this AMS support group.
Also, this is implementation consulting. Then you also have strategy consulting. Those people don't do any implementation. The McKinseys, BCGs.
So what do they do?
I think they just come in and they consult on strategy, and then they leave.
It's similar, right? So we're filling a technology need in terms of SAP, right? So
Okay.
McKinsey and them will come in, but again, it's a short-term, hey, I've got this problem, I need to solve it.
Specific problem that I
Whether
need
it's
to
a
solve.
strategy problem or whether it's a technology problem, right?
Okay.
It's come in short term, implement, solve the problem, and then move on.
Yeah, so it's like usually like a one-time need. It's not like a vendor. I think vendors in consulting are different. So when you hire a vendor,
okay.
they're usually just someone that you're getting in. I think that's a little bit cheaper than hiring a full-time employee. So Microsoft, all these companies hire vendors through like Cognizant and all those but those are vendors who are doing continual work.
Oh, okay.
Subcontractors, vendors, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
so because Cognizant is one of them that does something similar to what Accenture does, but
Correct.
a lot of them supplement companies like Microsoft long term.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So there's all
They're
these
not a
different
Microsoft
types
employee,
of
but
things.
yeah.
So I have a question. So, and this comes from a point which you mentioned, right? Consultants are experts in a particular domain or a field, right?
Correct.
And usually to become an expert in a field, you have to spend some time in it. As you mentioned, it took you like around 7 years or 8 years to become a director right now, right? So you've been in this field for almost a decade, right?
Yeah.
Now, the follow-up question that I have is, I, as a personality, right, I tend to get bored very quickly. For example, if I've mastered a topic or if I've become an expert in a topic, I don't want to continue increasing my knowledge in that field. I usually try to like increase the breadth of my knowledge. So does this happen with you as well? And if that's the case, doesn't it become very difficult for a consultant to jump out of the field because they won't be able to do anything else? Is that correct? Is that wrong? Or how do you navigate in that sense?
No, it is, right? And I think I'm dealing with that now. So
Okay.
So you've got several different types of consultants, right? You've got consultants that build expertise.
Uh-huh.
But the thing, again, SAP specifically, you can spend 40 years in SAP and you'll know 40%, right?
Uh-huh.
It's so vast. There's so much in SAP, right?
Oh.
So
Wait,
people-
but it's a software, right?
it is a software, but the functionality and the amount of functionality and what it can do is so immense.
Okay.
That I have people reporting to me that have been consultants for 40 years.
40 years.
And there's still an opportunity for them to learn new modules.
Yeah, because
new
SAP
functionality.
keeps releasing new things.
Right,
And
right.
it's
In
not
terms of
just
features,
one.
right?
And SAP is not just you can have SAP for supply chain, for human resources, for
Finance,
so many
and
things.
logistics, and
No, but
planning.
I understand that. But the thing is, like, say, let's talk about one niche area, right? Let's talk about supply chain, since you're an expert in that, right? Supply chain has a couple of arms, like it has like third-party systems, vendors, logistics. What else is there?
Procurement,
Procurement.
production, planning, right?
But there are
Logistics
like
execution.
limited number of things that you can learn as well over there, right? So how can the operations be so vast that people cannot learn it in 40 years? I'm not able to understand or grasp that.
It's just, and the other thing, right, is, so it's like what SAP offers, right, as a baseline tool. But then it's like every industry that you go into implements SAP in a very different way.
And they do custom implementations, a lot of custom stuff.
So you build expertise not only in the SAP software, but then you understand how that software applies to certain industries.
And that specific company, right?
Yeah, so like SAP for pharma is very different than SAP for food.
Oh, it's
right, than SAP for automotive.
Oh, so it's company specific and a
industry specific. Industry specific. Yeah.
So back to the question: how do you not get bored?
So there's a couple of so I know people that report to me that have done this for 40 years, right? Maybe their personalities that they're not willing to venture out, maybe life circumstances, but they basically found one narrow track and they've done it, and they do it well.
Okay.
Right, they build expertise. That's their comfort zone, and they don't want to get out. I'm not the polar opposite. Like I don't jump around every year, right? And that's part of how I made, to get to a director, you have to build tenure.
Correct.
Right. So my director role was not necessarily my director role is not necessarily tied to my expertise in SAP. Because really building expertise in SAP doesn't mean you become a director. The director for my company is more people focused. Like you can lead. So I'm not I'm not the expert compared to a lot of other people, but I had a knack for like managing people, managing circumstances, managing situations, that leadership. Which again is separate from being an expert in the product. If you can become an expert in the product and never become a director. Yeah. The director is really more managing people, managing teams, managing strategies. And some people like doing that. I like doing that. I wanted to get out of the product. Some people just love the product. They love being narrow focused in the weeds, right? Implementing a solution. I wanted to engage with other people, build breadth, right? And not 100% depth.
So you haven't gotten bored?
So not with being a director, right? But I have started getting, I've been doing, sort of SAP consulting for, about 7 years now. So I am starting to get a little bit, bored. And so I actually have changed positions.
Oh, wow. Like, are you going to change a position or have you changed positions already?
I'm starting Jan 1st. I start a new role at the same company. But now I'm going outside of consulting.
Oh, wow.
And more into the sales and pre-sales side.
And how similar is sales and pre-sale to consulting?
Very different.
Yeah, they're completely different.
Wait, so how I'm pretty sure that there'll be a big learning curve for you as well, right?
There will be, right? So my selling point with this role, right? So this new role is Director of Innovations and Product Delivery. So it's like you participate in selling. So SAP provides what SAP provides, right? But it never fills the need of everyone, right? It's a generic software. Everyone needs to customize. So what we do is we build our own portfolio of products, right? To supplement what SAP doesn't provide and what we think is commonly used across industries, and we prepackage and we sell it as our own software. So that portfolio comes under me. So it's then understanding how to sell or support the sale of that additional, because every time we sell this, what we call IP, is 100% revenue to my company, right? There's no licensing to SAP, nothing. It's 100% revenue to us for the sale, the delivery of the the software and the service, all and licensing. Everything is our own, right? We don't share any of the revenue and or anything with SAP. So it's profitable, right? So this is more now. So you need to understand how to. I think the person previously who held the role had never been a consultant, right? So what we always had was a gap between they were good at selling all of this, and we really struggled trying to deliver it, right?
Oh, because there's a gap.
Yeah, they sold it, moved on, and as a consultant, I felt the pain of trying to deliver a product that we didn't have any support. So my selling point is, right, I will have to learn a little bit of how to sell, how to support the demos, how to scope out work, build statements of work, But then I can be a better bridge
between that and consulting.
between that and consulting, having been on the consulting side and having the, the relationships and just knowing how consulting works, I can make sure that we not only sell it, but we also deliver it and support it, right, adequately.
Yeah, so I have a question. So I wanted to go back to what he said. Walk us through what it takes to become a director at nearly the age of like 30 something.
Yeah, because
what is that
becoming
journey?
a director requires, as you mentioned, tenure, right? But more than tenure, I feel it requires impact and you having a solid knowledge on not just people management, but the product management as well. For example, like people who report under you, right?
Yeah.
They can feed you bullshit if you don't have an understanding of what the product is.
And
right?
then also just like really good leadership, empathy, all of that stuff. So what was that journey? I want to hear all of it.
The journey for me was, I started as a junior consultant at my company in 2016.
Okay.
And, quickly got the hang of things, built the right relationships. But I think not only proving that I could do the consulting piece of it, but then through my actions, through my interactions with customers, with internal teams, right, people saw that I had more than just a consulting mindset, right? I had a leadership mindset. So in 2018, the consulting manager position opened up, right? So the consulting manager reported to consulting director. So that was my first step up. So I said, why not, right? So 2 years in, I became a consulting manager.
Did you apply or were you promoted?
No, I applied, right?
Oh, you applied, okay.
Yeah, I applied, interviewed for it. And so then the focus became a little bit more on managing, but managing a very junior team.
Okay.
So I managed a very junior team of first and second year consultants, right? But I started engaging with our staffing teams and, other stakeholders and understood more about how to sort of run things, right? Not just focusing on the solution. So I did that for, a year and a half, 2 years and clearly did it well, made an impact. And then basically the position I reported up to, the director position, opened up. And for me, I felt like it was a natural progression. I was doing more of what I was already doing, but also doing a lot.
And you applied for this.
Making a bigger impact. So I applied, interviewed.
Wait, you applied again?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, becoming director and stuff is not a natural progression, right?
Okay.
Not as a consultant. So you start as a junior consultant, and then the natural progression is you go from junior consultant to senior consultant, and then if you want to stay in the solution, senior consultant to a solution architect. That's a natural progression. Over time, you get that promotion, right? You don't have to apply for it. But
and
these
this is
roles,
a lateral move into managerial positions, right?
No. He's saying that you go from junior consultant, senior consultant, solution architect.
Yeah, but for him, right? For him to get into managerial position, he had to make a lateral move, apply to positions, and then go
not
there,
lateral.
Right?
They were upper moves.
So it was so they were upper moves, right?
Okay.
So in terms of we have L levels as well. So it was higher L levels. So I was still a consultant. I still did consulting projects, but I had additional responsibility to make sure people were staffed and really additional responsibility in addition to being a consultant. But it literally was a move up, right, in terms of L levels.
Okay.
So yeah, wow, that's
and then
amazing.
and so then when the director position opened up in early 2020, right around the pandemic actually, I applied for that and the interview was basically, look, I've done this as a manager. This is a chance to do it on a bigger scale and take on more responsibility. And so I got that position, right? And so now that gave me responsibility for a much larger team, right? From people that are 23 to people that are 65, right? That report up to me.
Wow. So I have a question. You mentioned something about people being not bored of getting into consultancy even at the age of 40, right? Or having an experience of 40 years. Now, there's something which I never got a hang of. There is a myth that consultants usually travel a lot because they have to go to offsites, they have to go to onsites, they have to consult people and all. And usually what I feel is traveling, the people travel or people are wanderers because they are curious. They get bored and they want to go to a different place, right? That's why I travel pan-US, I travel outside US because I get bored of the same position. Now, coming back to the boring aspect, right? If people are not getting bored of being in the same domain for 40 years, how are they still consultants and they like traveling? Isn't that a dichotomy that is being faced right now?
So the travel part has changed, right? Has evolved
in pandemic,
right?
But
keep in mind the people that have been in consulting for 40 years. Yes, it almost seems like it would be monotonous, but there's something SAP releases new functionality. There's always something to learn, and so these people and then keep in mind, I think the other thing, right, and this is where you get to a certain point where you have to be very cognizant of what your longer term goals are, because if you don't pivot out of SAP, you get stuck in SAP
And
indefinitely.
you can't do anything else.
Right? So it's very hard. Like, if I wanted to go work for Microsoft or Apple or Facebook, right? If you're so focused on SAP, unless that company uses SAP, it's not a skill that translates over easily.
Oh, okay.
So
Is
people
that why you chose to pivot out?
Right, exactly, right?
And you did it at the right time.
Yeah, so this role for me, this new role for me, still keeps me within the SAP ecosystem, but I get out of being so focused on SAP, and I get to understand managing, selling, delivering a product.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
that is
and
translatable.
That's super transferable.
Yeah.
You
And
can,
also,
easily
like, when
go-
people travel, they're traveling to different clients. They're understanding different use cases, different problems, right?
Well, so then going back, so people that stay in it for 40 years find a way, I guess, to keep themselves motivated, and I think
Okay.
at some point accept that that is their path, right?
That they chose.
And it's very hard to pivot. And then the whole travel piece of it, yes, right? Now, whether you're McKinsey, right, doing strategy, or you're Deloitte, Accenture, or us, you have to go where the customer is, right?
Okay.
How is traveling for you? How did you manage your life with all the travel? Because I know you traveled a lot.
Yeah, so pre-consulting,
Uh-huh.
right, that was really where I had more of the glamorous travel, right?
Okay.
Because I did trips to China, Singapore, Brazil.
Uh-huh.
That was more exciting. It was early in my career.
Correct.
It was just a good learning experience, right? But the thing with being a consultant, right, and being on a project for a year, you usually go to the same place, right? So SAP consulting, unless most of the time you're on one project for a year or 2 years. So you're actually going to the same place every week for a year.
Oh, okay.
So it actually can get very monotonous.
Uh-huh.
My first project was up in Buffalo, and I spent a year going every week to Buffalo,
Wait, really?
right?
Yeah,
And
Buffalo, New York.
New York,
Yeah.
Buffalo. Nice.
Sometimes you get stuck, going to North Dakota for a year, or sometimes, like right now, I'm in San Francisco, right? Which is different kind of travel, but it's still a lot of travel, right?
Okay.
Now, pre-pandemic, the expectation, the norm was every week, right?
Okay.
Fly Monday morning, fly back Thursday, do that every week,
Uh-huh.
Wow.
because you have to be around the customer, right? That was the expectation and the norm. Now with the pandemic, right? So for a good year after March 2020, there was really not much travel at all, right?
Oh,
If there was
wow.
travel, it was like a go live and rare, right? Very like exceptional.
Okay.
Now we're starting to get back into so I think what's happening now, and this is still evolving, but it's becoming sort of a hybrid model, right? Because I think what happened is before the pandemic, no one had ever explored what a successful implementation would look like not being on site.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
amazing. Now with all the stuff with Teams, Zoom, Slack, all these things, you don't have to go to the customer every single
The
week.
connectivity is so amazing on the social graph. It's just that you don't have to be present at the physical location for you to explain what you
Correct.
have to do.
And how is
right?
that going? Do you is
Yeah.
that working?
Yeah, so it is, right? So what ended up happening is the thing is like, even as a company, if we had the ability, the tools and everything, a lot of customers didn't.
Oh,
So
okay.
both parties have to be able, both parties have to have teams and the infrastructure to
Correct.
interact remotely. And not every customer has that, right? A lot of traditional companies, manufacturing facilities, you're just on site. Like, people don't spend a lot of time on Teams. So what the pandemic did, of course, is that projects still had to go on, implementations had to go on, but you couldn't travel. So that accelerated, not only for us, but for a lot of other companies, accelerated the need to kind of get up to speed with
Yeah.
operating remotely, because a lot of their workforce shifted from being in the office to being remote.
So is consulting like advising people to do what they can do better with their job or their processes?
That's
That-
one part, but then you
One
actually
part.
have the
Strategy.
implementation.
Implementation.
That's
as well.
one part of it. So one part of it is, yes, you try and improve their process. The other part of it is you just have to say, hey, you produced today using Oracle,
Okay.
because that's what I'm doing with Ghirardelli.
Uh-huh.
They're on JD Edwards today, which is Oracle, but they're moving to SAP. And it's having them understand, right, how they're going to do the same thing using SAP.
in a better fashion.
And then you layer on, okay, you do this way today, there's a better way to do it. So what they do is they leverage our knowledge of SAP, but leverage our knowledge of having done this so many times of how to do it better.
Yeah.
So the way technology works in my mindset, right? usually the products who are very superior in quality or like superlative in quality, those are the products which shine to the top, and everyone uses that product, right? For example, let's say the communication system or social media. There's Facebook, Twitter, and there are multiple others as well. But majority of the people use Facebook or Twitter itself, right?
Or TikTok.
In consulting, I see a consulting company everywhere. Even in Bothell, right, the place where I live, I can easily count like 20 to 30 consulting companies which are there, right? So in a market where there are so many consulting companies, why do people choose something like for example, let's say for the heck of example, Cognizant, Accenture, McKinsey, and all these consulting companies are in tier 0 and all the others are in tier 1. Why would someone go for a tier 1 company versus a tier 0 company when the value addition of a tier 0 company can be way more than a tier 1 company?
It's expensive.
Exactly, right? So that's exactly it, right? I mean, it depends on your budget.
Okay.
Right? So, gosh, an SAP implementation can cost $100 million if you're doing it globally over multiple years.
Okay.
Right?
The license or the consulting part? The license,
All
right?
of it.
Total, right? So
Total, right?
So there's multiple aspects, right? So there's the licensing piece that is pricey, but honestly, it doesn't matter whether Cognizant, Accenture, or a tier 3 consulting company does it. That doesn't change, right? You still have to pay SAP what you're going to pay SAP.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, these people are resellers. Like we resell, so maybe you get a bit of a discount based on.
So that's what I'm asking, right? If you're spending $100 million on a license, right? Why not go for the best available consultancy?
No. He's saying the license cost is the same.
Right.
So the difference is.
So you're not spending $100 million on the license. Let's just say you're spending $5 million on the SAP license. Now the difference between a $50 million implementation and a $10 million implementation is that difference of $5 million versus $45 million is the consulting company, right?
But what happens in the difference of 45 million are the number of consultants who are given to you more, or the advice is more?
I think the quality.
It's
the speed, the quality, the expertise.
It's
quality
exactly.
In what sense? Like the basic okay, so the thing that I'm trying to understand is, let's say Facebook as an example, right? Facebook can have multiple users. If I'm a Facebook consultant, I'm teaching it to my grandparents, right? I'll be teaching you the same quality and the same features that it provides. So SAP can have X number of features, right? Any consultant will tell them that these are the features that they know. How can the quality of consultant?
It's the quality of the resource, right? So like Accenture hires some of the best people.
Okay.
Right. Not only in terms of their knowledge of the product, but just their understanding of the industry, or their understanding of processes. And the most valuable people are experts in SAP, and they're experts in that process.
Okay.
And bringing those two together, right? It's invaluable, because then what they can help implement is a world-class process, leveraging a world-class system.
Yeah, and also just like implementing SAP is not just implementing SAP. You have good SAP. You have an SAP for supply chain means you could have an amazing supply chain. Without good SAP, companies cannot run their supply chain. They can't run their processes.
So do consultancies like put in contracts that might also be a rat race, right? Say suppose there are X number of tier 3 companies. They might also be filling contracts that, hey, we want this client to come into our portfolio so that we can help out. So how does the contracting system or how does the vendor system work in that case?
So before we go to that, like the difference then is going to be if you hire an Accenture, for example, and I don't know for sure, right, what it is, but like some companies will give you resources for $150 an hour.
Okay.
If you go straight with SAP or you go with Deloitte and Accenture and you get the best resource, $300 an hour.
Oh, just because of the brand name?
Brand name, the type of resource, what they're capable of. So, actually, a large chunk of what a big chunk of an implementation cost outside of SAP licensing, in my perspective, is implementation costs.
Oh,
right? Because you basically pay an hourly rate for a consultant. And then, of course, there's a piece of it, the travel and expenses, which can be huge. That's helping. Not traveling every week is helping bring down the cost of implementation because
you don't have to pay for flights and rental
historically,
cars.
it's been assume it's $2,000 a week for a consultant. So $8,000 a month for a consultant to travel there. Take a team of 10 consultants. You're talking about $80,000 a month.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
Right, just in travel and expenses. Right, you run a project for a year. You're talking about what?
I just came up with an amazing idea. So suppose consulting now makes the world of consulting now makes sense. Like the previously, like if I date back to 1500s as well, right? Probably when I was when a person was a king, they might also need advisors or people who might be strategists or like implementation specialists who can implement the king's vision. And right now the companies do that. in future that might be something different. So that makes sense. So if there's a startup which comes in with an AI or an ML model which can come up with the best strategies, best implementation tactics, can that totally disrupt the consulting industry,
No,
or will
because
consulting
is very, very unique.
So
It's very
that will be always there?
specific.
It'll
Super
always be.
specific.
And I think that, yeah.
It's like a doctor, right? You maybe can automate a doctor, but the charm of a doctor is that they can understand the exact problem that a patient is going through and help them with it.
But the whole point of the doctor is that they operate on a physical body. If it's advice that can be given, advice can be automated, right?
No, they're not just giving advice, they're implementing
I'm just talking
systems.
about the advice arm of the consulting aspect. Do you think that will be...
SAP is doing a lot, right, in ML and AI and, blockchain and all of that,
Correct.
right? But the piece of the consulting that you can never replace, I don't think, is just the ability to work one-on-one with the user. I mean, every user is so different. Like, I'm working on a project right now where some users just need a lot more focus, a lot more attention, and that's the human aspect that will never get replaced.
It's the same thing as product management. I don't think that portion of it can be replaced.
So here's
you can make it more efficient. You can make some pieces more efficient, but you can't totally take out the human aspect of it.
Oh, so here's what is interesting. So there is a study, and that people right now talk about the fact that by 2050 there might be a chance that you don't need a single software developer, because the AI and the ML code can easily write code for themselves and keep scraping off the old code and keep evolving on their own itself. So will consulting never go?
No, that's true, because a software writing code requires almost no interaction with another human being. Right?
Yeah,
you're interacting almost 100% with
the
code,
customers.
You're not. It's not a lot of interacting with people. Right? What consultants have to do, aside from making a solution work, is making sure the people can use the solution. Right? It's like you're a teacher. You're a teacher. And that piece of it won't go away.
In that sense, I think it's really similar to product management, because you really have to understand people's needs and you have to give them a solution, make sure that works for them. Taking feedback, iterating. So, but I had a question. I wanted to deviate a little bit more on the personal side. So how was your life when you were traveling, and how did you build a routine? Because something I used to think that I really wanted to be in consulting because it's a very hyped up thing. Obviously, to go to McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Accenture, Deloitte, it's like, oh my God. And then all this glamorized stuff around travel. But it's like, one thing I really value is like a community and having myself rooted somewhere and being able to leave work and go to happy hours and then go to watch a movie with friends and spend time on the weekends and be in my home. So how did you build that life, and what was it internally for you for years to just not have that rooting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mindset shift, right? I mean, the essence of it is that there is no being rooted, right? You have to be very comfortable just being on the go, right? Living out of a suitcase. But what ends up happening is that the same thing, right? You can be at home today and go for happy hour after work and go for a movie. What you end up doing then is that you do that with your team. Right? You're never on your own, right? You're always a team. So
it's work all the time. You can't really escape it, right?
It's no. I mean, we had a lot of times where, traveling after work, we'd go for dinners and escape rooms and happy hours, but you just do it with
your work team.
With your work team, and again, you don't have to talk about work, and a lot of times we never talked about work. So they kind of become your social circle and family that Monday through Thursday, right? And then you get back, and then you've got your normal life.
Is it jarring to come back and you're like, oh my God, now what do I do? I have all this stuff I need to do, and you're trying to build a personal life at home as well.
Well, and that's why I think it depends when you get started, right? If you didn't have anything established, then you come back and there's nothing there, and that probably is a little bit, jarring. But if you had something established, then you come back to some sort of routine, right? And eventually you kind of figure out what your weekends look like, what your weekdays look like.
Was it hard to maintain friendships outside of consulting? Do you feel like you were able to give time to those relationships that you wouldn't get to see?
Yeah, I mean, I don't look back and say that I lost any friends or my friendships suffered because of that. I mean, everyone understood, right? The fact that I wasn't around and I was missing things was because I truly was not there.
It's about personal priority, right? It was everything has a I hate to say this word selfish, because selfish is sometimes good as well. You have to be
selfish to an extent.
Yes, but I think you don't lose friendships because of the priorities that you set for yourself.
Right.
If you're
on the journey of making new friends, it becomes really difficult to do that if you're not physically there.
So for me, I was never on that journey of making new friends because,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was in Houston. I lived in Houston. I went to college in Houston. I went to high school in Houston. So my friendships were already built, right? I was not trying to make... if I had moved to a new city, different story. But
Okay.
I had friendships that I'd already
That's really
built.
good.
So that was not the struggle. But I will say, right, the dating piece becomes a bit of a struggle, right?
Yes.
'Cause you're not
I-
there, yeah.
So I was going to come to the
Yes.
dating piece as to how.
So that was always a struggle, right?
Uh-huh.
That I will say, like, that was immensely difficult,
It
right?
was.
I mean, if you don't start with a solid relationship,
Mhm.
like dating is incredibly difficult, right? Because I mean, you're gone 4 days out of the week,
Correct.
so it's like, okay, you've got to make time for dates. So maybe you spend. Then what happens is that you focus a lot of your weekend that you're back
Mm-hmm.
going on dates,
Okay.
right? But the problem that you go on a date, it's a successful date,
Uh-huh.
but you know, with any, like when you're starting to date, like
you have to spend more time.
you have to spend a lot of time, otherwise it fizzles out, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the thing is, like, you spend a couple of good dates over the weekend, and then you're gone for 4 days.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. So this is because travel is a big piece in consulting and has been in your life as well, right? So and you have traveled more than 30 countries, right?
Or
So-
what is the count? Actually?
What is the count?
How
Do you
many
have a count?
countries? I told you to count this.
So I have
Yeah,
a question.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and like.
You need
So
look
this
at
is
it.
count
something
this.
which I've realized. People up until the count of 25, they have a fixed count of the number of countries. they've
I
visited.
keep count of all my countries.
Because you've visited less than 25 countries. Every
No,
person
no,
who
no.
visits.
Till I will always count because I'm just like so A-type like that.
So I've met many people who used to be who have told me that till 25 you have the count because having a count validates that you're traveling so many countries, but after 25 it becomes an enjoyable experience. Not just enjoyable, like it becomes an experience where you stop giving a fuck about like what the count is.
Yeah.
Because
so
you've traveled
you've probably been to a lot of countries.
more than 30, right?
Yeah.
So how many of these countries have been work travel versus pleasure travel?
So, I mean, a lot of like the countries I travel to for work. So
Uh-huh.
I haven't traveled to a lot of countries for work.
Okay.
So I did China, Singapore,
Uh-huh.
really China, Singapore, and Brazil for work.
Okay.
Everything else has been outside of work, but I've always loved traveling.
Yeah.
So
He
yes,
inspired me to get into travel.
so much more than 30 countries, right? But a
Uh-huh.
lot of it. So this is where my travel.
When did you start traveling? Like outside of
Gosh.
after college, during college, when?
during college?
Yeah,
So-
you studied abroad in Vietnam.
Yeah. So if you look back, so if you talk about the travel journey,
Uh-huh.
right, and just my love for travel.
The reason I say this is, sorry to cut you, is because even if you count in your education aspect, right? Education plus your work has been 11 years. 11 years, 30 countries. That's almost 3 countries on an average yearly basis, right? When do you take out time and like how do you plan your travel then?
So a good example, right, is when I studied abroad,
Uh-huh.
right? When I studied abroad, it was 5 weeks and I covered 5 countries,
Okay.
right? So
Because they're kind of
sometimes,
close to each other.
Yeah.
You can.
yeah. So sometimes, and I've done, and it's usually like outside of studying abroad and like being in college, 2-3 international trips a year, right?
Okay.
Wow.
And do you plan it properly? Like so do you not invest in like domestic travel, or do you do domestic travel as well?
Not as much, right? So
Okay.
I think my focus now, and with my fiance, I mean, I think we both value the international,
Uh-huh.
the cultural experience. And so if we're planning travel, pre-pandemic, right, it was always somewhere outside the U.S. I mean, it's okay traveling within the U.S., but I think you don't get the culture, right?
Yeah. So
So
what
we
is?
don't-
Can you talk us through what has been your most favorite travel experience?
It's hard. That's hard.
And how has your travel experience changed across
One
years? Because
question at a
I'll tell
time.
you something. Like we can have a club of questions. Like what is your favorite and how has it changed over the years as well?
So in terms of how it's changed is when I first started traveling, it was very budget travel, right? So
Okay.
I studied abroad. In college, it was very, very basic travel,
Uh-huh.
right? Basic accommodations, basic everything, budgeting everything, right? That's when I studied abroad in Southeast Asia. And then how it's changed now is when I can travel now, I can travel more kind of, it's not all about budget. Can take longer trips,
Uh-huh.
stay in better places. So it's evolved from being budget travel to more, call it luxurious travel.
So coming back to her question,
which
what
is
was
your
favorite experience? Was it the budget
Or
experience
just
the
a good
experience now?
experience that like really sticks out to you.
Yeah,
Couple.
I mean, there were fun times. Like the budget travel had its own charm, right?
What was it? I want to understand, because if the money is a constraint, right, you're blocked on many things that you can do. So
No, I mean like staying in hostels and staying
Uh-huh.
like that. I mean, it's a different experience altogether, and you do it because you have to do it. But it gives you a sense of just a different view of how how to travel in a country,
Yeah,
right?
staying in
Versus staying in a 5-star
hostels.
hotel, right? So I've done a lot of different kinds of travel, right? So if we go back to if I just talk about the travel journey, so I've traveled just for fun. I've done study abroads.
Volunteer abroad.
I've traveled for work, right? And the work travel was flying business class, staying in 5-star hotels.
Oh wow.
But then I've done a lot of also volunteer, like trying to build more meaning into travel,
Yeah, we
right?
volunteered abroad in Guatemala.
Wait, what really? What
Yeah.
did you volunteer for?
So there's an organization called International Volunteer Headquarters,
Okay.
and they offer trips all around the world, right? They plan everything for you. You book your flight, but then you pay an X amount per week for the program, and they've got the accommodations. And so really what it is it's geared towards, if you're in medical, you can go and do some medical volunteering as a local nurse
Okay.
in impoverished areas. You can teach a different
I
language.
think we taught English, and we also built a clinic. We helped
Wow.
physically
Wow.
build a clinic.
And this was in college or out after college?
No, I was in
she
college.
was in college. This
Uh-huh.
was, I think, in 2016.
Okay.
So really what ended up happening was that I studied abroad
Uh-huh.
in college, and then after that my travel, like I said, I went to Germany and picked up a car, and that was its own form of travel. So that trip there, I mean, I did 4 countries in a little over a week.
Which
Oh,
countries
wow.
did you do?
So I
Germany,
did Turkey, Germany,
Vienna,
Austria, and Czech Republic, Prague.
Wow. You mentioned something about picking up a car in Germany, right?
Yes.
And I know Zeeshan for some time now, and that's why I know his story. But I did not know that you can actually pick up a car from the factory itself up until I met you. So how did you figure out that you can pick up a car? Like, how did you find it out? And like, how was the experience going to a different country, picking up a car? And like, how did you ship it as well?
So I knew someone who had done it, right? So
Uh-huh.
same thing. When I first found out, I was shocked. I was like, this is incredible, right?
Who isn't?
Yeah, but you can do it when you're getting a car that's generally made outside of the U.S., right?
Mhm.
So in my case, it was BMW, and all the BMWs are generally made in Germany,
Okay.
right? Outside of the X5s
should be.
and stuff that are made
It
in South
should be.
Carolina. Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't want a car made in South Carolina.
no, like they don't make
Germany.
they don't make the X5s there because there's not a lot of demand, and it's just
Okay.
the factories are too big, right? So
Uh-huh.
they make those here. But the
Uh-huh.
cars that are made in Germany, so BMW, Porsche, Mercedes, Audi, they all offer it.
Okay.
So it's really meant to be. It's like
An experience.
it's meant to be brand loyalty
Uh-huh.
and an experience.
Okay.
So I knew someone who had done it for BMW, and when I started looking at a BMW, an entry-level BMW, I was like, this is how I want to do it. So I researched it, went to my dealership, right, kind of picked out the car, and then said, hey, I wanted to do European delivery. And so what it is it's an established program. They're not doing it
Okay.
now because of COVID, unfortunately, but it's an established program, right? It's brand loyalty. So you pick up, you spec out your car, however you want to build your car, right? So the good thing is you get to build a car the way you want to build a car.
Uh-huh.
You don't have to pick something that's on the lot because they're going to make it anyways.
Okay.
Oh.
So you build it, and then it's like 2 months notice, and then they give you a date at the factory, right, where it's built.
Okay.
And so really all you do is then you book your own flight,
Uh-huh.
and you go to Munich in this case, right? Germany, if you're doing it for Mercedes, you go to Stuttgart, wherever it is, right? So I went into Munich, flew into Munich, actually got there the last day of Oktoberfest.
Okay.
So got to experience
That's
Wow,
Oktoberfest.
you got to experience. I didn't know you got to do Oktoberfest in Germany.
Yeah, I got
Was
there
it
the last
amazing?
day. Yes, it was incredible.
You
So
didn't
that, I've
drink
always
and
said
drive,
like
right?
that's no. So I got there on Sunday,
Okay.
experienced the last day of Oktoberfest, and then on
Uh-huh.
Monday I had my appointment to pick up the car.
Oh wow.
And that's why I always said like my bachelor party, if I can, I'll do my bachelor party in
In
Munich.
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 Yeah, it's an incredible experience. But so had an appointment for that, that Monday. You show up at the BMW factory,
Mm-hmm.
you have breakfast, you meet with someone, you get a free tour of the museum, and then at a specific time, right, you basically stand sort of on an outer ledge,
Okay.
and your car comes up on a spindle top
Wait,
from
really?
the
Is it
garage
like-
down there.
Have you seen SWAT Cats, the cartoon?
No.
Okay, have you seen how planes are taken into elevators into different
So
buildings?
something very
Is it
similar.
oh
Something very
wow,
similar.
that's so
you
cool.
stand, and then your car comes up from the garage down there, and then the advisor, right, that you're working with will take you. They'll show you the car. They'll answer any questions. And then BMW includes. When I did it, BMW included 2 weeks full insurance
Okay.
as part of the program, and actually doing this program, you got a 7% discount on the car.
Wait,
Oh,
really?
wow.
So the travel is covered in
So
your
they basically call it the travel's covered. So it's a loyalty program. They're taking the hit, but it builds brand loyalty because guess what? I bought another BMW. So it clearly
Did it
worked,
fly
right?
this time as well?
No.
Or
No.
I was
So
during
because
COVID.
of COVID and the X3 is not made in
Where
Munich,
is it made? South
South
in
Carolina.
South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
So then you got your car. So then how did you get it to the United
So
Yeah.
States?
all the BMWs get put on a ship, right?
Okay.
They all come. They're all imported anyways.
Uh-huh.
So all you're doing is you're going in, you're intercepting it for 2 weeks or however long. So what you do is you basically pick it up, and it includes 2 weeks full insurance, and after that you can cover insurance, and you can kind of make a road trip out of it. So what I did is I picked up the BMW, drove it to Vienna,
Uh-huh.
so I got to experience driving on the Autobahn.
Autobahn.
But
How is it like driving an Autobahn?
Wait, what is Autobahn?
It's one of the. It's a highway where there's no speed limit, and it's used for money driving purposes as well. It's
Yeah.
very famous.
Wait, how is that?
It's incredible. So I was driving 120 and I was in the slow lane.
Wait, really?
Wow.
So what are the cars? So my friends have driven on Autobahn, and they say you don't see a car less than like a BMW 3 Series. In that you see Lamborghinis, you see Porsches.
You see all cars, but you'll see like vans and stuff. Because keep in mind, Autobahn goes through city. So like
Uh-huh.
in the city, the Autobahn's like any other road. There is a speed
okay.
limit.
Okay.
There are certain stretches of the Autobahn as you go between like Munich and
speed
Vienna
limit.
where there's no speed limit.
Wow.
But there was every kind of car. But again, everyone's maintaining a certain speed, and
Uh-huh.
so it was good, right? Like you get to drive very fast, but you don't know you're driving very fast because everyone's driving the same same speed.
What happens if you don't like a car when you go to Munich and you realize, hey, this is not what I liked? Like, it looked good on pictures, but now I don't like it. Like, is there a way
Wow.
that you
I
can
mean,
back out?
I'm sure they can. Like, again, I mean, they can probably sell that car, right? There's
Okay.
nothing so unique about the car that they can.
Yeah, they
sell
don't
it.
So
write
do
your
you-
name in pink
Right.
glitter.
Do you
on
buy
the
it?
seats.
Do you buy it in Munich, or do you buy it first and then you go?
No, you buy. So you buy it.
They
in-
need the money to make
No,
it.
so everything is done at a U.S. dealership.
Okay.
Exactly like you'd buy it here.
Oh,
The
okay.
only difference is that instead of signing the paperwork and then driving the car off the lot, a
Uh-huh.
U.S. parking lot, a U.S. dealership lot, you just 2 months out, you get an appointment, you go pick up the car, you get to drive it around Europe, and then you can drop it off in 12 different cities.
Wow. So you went
Wow.
to Vienna, and then where did
So
you
I
go
dropped
after
it
that?
off in Vienna.
Uh-huh.
So some people will take like a 2-week trip in Europe and drive it all around Europe and then drop it off. So
2 weeks free insurance, right?
2 weeks free
Makes
insurance,
sense.
and basically you don't have to rent a car, right?
Which is amazing.
Which in Europe is amazing, yeah. So, but I only drove it for a day.
Okay.
So I drove it to Vienna, dropped it off at the drop-off point in Vienna. They've got predefined, drop-off points,
Uh-huh.
and then they'll organize getting it back from Vienna
To your
Munich,
house.
to
Oh.
Munich, and then it gets on a ship with all the other
Wow.
BMWs that are coming to the U.S. anyways.
Anyway, yeah.
So you drive your car, drop it off, and then that same car gets put on a ship with all the other cars, and it makes it to your dealership 2 or 3 months later.
Oh wow.
And then you go pick it up.
So then after Vienna, where did you go?
So I dropped it off in Vienna and then spent some time in Vienna, but I didn't want to drive and keep a car in parking and stuff is a pain, right, in some of these European cities.
Yeah, definitely.
So dropped it off in Vienna and then spent some time in Vienna. Took the train, I think, to Prague.
Mm-hmm.
Czech
some-
Republic.
Yeah, spent some time in Prague, and then flew back and spent some time in Istanbul on the way back.
Okay,
And then
so wow.
got my car 2 months later.
Wow, that's
So-
amazing. That's a dream, dude.
Yeah,
That is so cool. I so want to do that.
Yeah, so there was that kind of travel,
Uh-huh.
and then I did a lot of work travel, and then I've done just personal travel, and then at some point you start wanting to find more meaning in your travel. So
Mhm.
this was around the time when I was doing a lot of travel. Like a lot of my friends were like married, kids, so I was just finding different ways to do things, So I started looking for volunteer trips, right? So I
Okay.
think it's always cool to volunteer and like make a difference, but if you can volunteer and get
The
the
travel
chance to travel,
experience, yeah.
right? It's awesome. So I started doing that. So found Guatemala in
And
2016.
I forcefully tagged along.
And so she tagged along, and like you live in a volunteer
I
house.
really
Okay.
wanted to do it because
wow.
I wanted to put it on my resume.
Yeah, it's something cool to speak about. I mean, but you
Uh-huh.
do make an impact. Like I think we did make
We
an
did,
impact. Like
we did.
it was
Any
it was
work which is
appreciated.
towards a good cause does make an impact, and even if like it's for a selfish reason, right? Resume.
Yeah.
Don't care as long as you're making an impact.
You made
right?
an
That
impact
is
in
what
the end.
matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's nice because like you live in a volunteer house, and I think when we got there it was in December over Christmas.
Okay.
There was like 30 other people.
Volunteers, and I still keep in touch with I don't know if you know Amira. She called me
Mm-hmm.
the other day. She graduated now.
Yeah.
Still keep in touch with some of the people. It's really nice.
Yeah, so because it's like you live in a volunteer house, and they're volunteers from all around the world.
all around the world.
And so like it's cool because like you can choose to like volunteer for half the day, and then like half the day you explore the
Fun.
country. So we basically in Guatemala, we're staying in Antigua, which is a really cool town.
Uh-huh.
But you just like go out with these
climbed
new
a volcano.
Yeah, we hiked a volcano. So you can like travel, do things, and also
and
make a
also
difference.
volunteer. It's
Um,
so fun.
So I did that. So we did that in 2016, and then in 2017, I did the same thing in Ecuador.
Oh wow.
Oh, I forgot that you did Ecuador.
So I went to Ecuador. I did Ecuador for a week. Same
the
thing.
volunteer thing, right?
Yep.
You taught people.
Did the volunteer thing. I did community development. So like we
Okay.
helped build some stuff in a school
Okay.
and whatnot.
Nice.
So I did that, and again, right, got to experience Quito, and did some mountain, hiked a volcano there as well. So it's really cool. Like you get to try the foods, and these are not countries I probably would want to travel on my own.
On your own,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So these were
But
countries
for a
that
reason.
yeah. So these were countries I picked where
And
I
it's
said
safe because you're with a group and you're with like,
everything's
people.
organized. Like
Mhm.
transportation's organized. Everything's organized. So these are the countries where I was like, I want to go, but I wouldn't want to plan it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that kind of travel. And then off late, then I met a great girl, and
How
got
did you
engaged.
meet her? Like you've been traveling a lot, you've been working
Mm-hmm.
a lot, right? So we spoke about dating, how it's difficult to date. So how did you meet your partner, and what is that story like? Like, did you accidentally or organically meet her, or was it through a dating app or something like
No,
that?
so that's the thing. Like, I tried the dating apps, and dating apps, you have some success, but the problem is, again, right? Like, you meet someone through a dating app, you meet them once,
Uh-huh.
you really have to start everything from scratch, and then you're gone for the next 4 days, and So, but this no. So I had a friend from college that was a nurse that was working one night and ended up floating in a unit and met this girl called Jennifer, who was another nurse,
Uh-huh.
who happened to be floating in the same unit.
Floating.
They just got
Floating.
floating, yeah.
Floating.
Yeah. And so they just basically started talking, and Jennifer was like, yeah, it's so hard to date, and this girl, close friend of mine, was like, yeah, I've got this guy, like this friend who's like a really great guy, and like, you should meet him. And so I got her number, so
It's the time for our meals, that's why.
No, no, no.
She'll have we can continue though.
she sent me her number.
Uh-huh.
But I was talking to another girl at the same time from a dating app, so
Uh-huh.
didn't do anything, didn't reach out. This was, I think, Jan of 2018. And then in March of 2018, things kind of fizzled out with that other girl, and I just finished a project in Canada.
Uh-huh.
And I had some downtime in Houston, and so I said, perfect time to reach out. So I reached out to Jennifer. We went out. I think first date was like a comedy club and steak night.
Oh wow.
Hit it off, like really enjoyed it.
How long did you guys talk for the first time you met? Did you just feel lost?
God,
in
yeah, like met her, I
conversation?
think at like 7:30 p.m.
Time just flew.
Called it a night at 2 a.m. and said, hey, there's a Cirque du Soleil tomorrow night. Do you want to go? And so we did that. And so like we started, basically we both kind of like really enjoyed each other's company. And so, but the good thing is I was in Houston. I wasn't traveling at the time. Because I was in between projects.
Okay.
So I had a lot more downtime in Houston. So we basically got a chance to kind of build a relationship. Then I did start traveling, because then I started doing a project at King's Hawaiian Bread, actually. But then at that time I'd established
Built
enough with
something.
Jennifer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we kept it going. Very similar personalities in one way, but different enough in other ways, right? Where, so yeah, kind of built that up, and it was nice. Finally, kind of establishing a relationship while ultimately going back to traveling.
Uh-huh. That makes sense. So, Zeeshan, my definition of success is for a person to be in a place where they are content, where they're happy, where they're able to do work that they like, where they're
Inspired.
able to grow, where they're able to inspire, and they're able to also build a family together as well, right? And in the entire conversation that we had right now, right, we spoke about your success. We spoke about how you currently inspire people as a people's manager, how you enjoy your life as like by traveling to different countries, how you've met a wonderful partner in Jennifer as well, right? So for people who right now are watching this episode, right, if they want to be successful, for you, again, success's definition is different for
Right.
for me, you're successful, right? So what is the advice that you want to give to people who are just coming out of college?
Or
What
any
should-
advice.
or
Like, what
any advice. What
advice
would
do
you want to
impart?
give it to them, so that they can also, if they want to like pursue a path just like you have, right?
Yeah, and I
What
will
is-
add, I was very inspired because like I chose. So I'm 8 years younger, so I chose like I had this zest to travel after seeing you travel.
And
then-
FYI, they both are related. They are brothers sisters. If you
Yes.
didn't already know.
So I was very motivated, and then I feel like you also have a lot of like knowledge on investing and all those things. I asked you a lot of questions, got those things squared away the first year I started working. So there's definitely so much to share. So like what would be the message that you would want to like impart with the world,
To young people, yes.
or the world in general?
Yeah, I think, figure out what your definition of success is, right?
Okay.
To your point, right, everyone's got a different version of success, right? Don't, and I think what's hard right now, and it was a little bit different when I was defining my version of success, because social media wasn't so huge at the time. Now the problem is it's so hard to be your own person.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the struggle, is that everyone looks at everyone else and thinks that they're successful and wants to become like them. But, funny enough, right, and you'll hear it a lot, is people that portray a successful life on social media
Are the most
They're not
insecure.
are the people that are not successful or not or insecure, but they're, and the funny thing is, like, people that, if you think I'm successful, I have no social media presence. I have no desire to put anything out in the world.
But why
right?
though?
Just, I'm generally I'm a more private person, right?
Okay.
I don't showcase everything, and I don't. I think social media
You
has
want to enjoy
its
it for
use.
yourself sometimes, right? You want to enjoy it for you, see it.
Yeah,
in
like
that
I don't
moment.
I don't want to do it for the comments, and I don't want to do it for,
So you don't seek validation
No.
for your success. Okay.
no,
that
and I
makes sense.
think that's been the key for me versus
That
a lot
is-
of other
yes,
people, right?
You
Is
really have that nailed. You've never
Yeah.
ever sought validation.
yeah, I
I've
don't
been
care
through
what
that journey.
right, so I don't care what people think, and I don't really care if someone posted a comment saying this sucks or it's great. It doesn't matter, right? Like, it's like it's your journey. Like, define the journey and figure out like what you want to do, right? I think, and that's what's so hard, right? Is like figuring out what you want to do, block out the noise, right? Of course, figure out what you're passionate about. So yeah, when I went to U of H, right, initially I had no idea about supply chain. I took one supply chain class and I was like, this is really cool. And I immediately pivoted and did supply chain, right?
And then I ended up doing supply chain.
Right.
But then I pivoted out of it as well.
Yeah, but then, and like, I love traveling, so I've always traveled regardless. I've prioritized traveling over other things, right? Other material things. Again, right? It's figure out what you want to do. Figure out what makes you happy. Figure out what inspires you.
But then how
And do
come
it.
you don't need validation? Because I'll say, and this is something I talked about on the podcast, is like, I don't know, maybe if it's like a thing that a lot of women go through where you really seek that validation. But I've really had to grow a little by little, inches by inches over the years to build that skin where, and it's still not fully formed, where I like don't care what people think. So I'm really curious how that happens.
I think that happens over age as well, right?
But how? You've
No, but-
never cared. He's never cared.
Yeah, but I
what
think
people
even when I was 22, right, I just didn't
Didn't care.
care what people think. I don't know. I think part of it is maybe the way I grew up, my surroundings at the time.
And
like,
we're in the same surroundings. So what happened?
No, but experiences also
no,
matter,
but that's
right?
the thing. I think the relationship you had with your parents was very different from mine, right?
Yeah.
For whatever it is, different personalities, different circumstances, whatever it is, right? But I spent a lot of my time growing up in Kenya, right, where I didn't spend a lot of time around my parents, right? You did, right? It was
A
different.
lot
You
of
spend a lot
time.
more time around your parents, and circumstances change, and people change, and so some of it is like, it's nurture versus nature, right? And I think that was the different equation for both of us.
That's amazing. Nurture versus nature. I'm going to clip it and like going to post it on
Yeah,
TikTok.
I mean,
as well.
there's like the nurture piece, like the nature piece you can probably control. The nurture piece is harder to control. But I think it's just, a lot of it is who I surrounded myself with, like just the people I gravitated towards, my friends and stuff. It was never about like competing with other people or like feeling like I had to be better than other people. And I think just personality wise, like, I mean, compared to her and compared to my older sister, right? I just have a very different personality. Maybe it's being a guy, maybe it's being a guy growing up with, predominantly women in the house. I don't know, but like I just never really cared what people thought, right? It's
That's really good. I
You
have
know.
one question. How is the journey coming from Kenya to the US in high school? Because I moved here when I was a kid, and so it's a little bit different. Like, I feel like you have a lot of room to adapt and like just mold yourself, but I could not imagine moving to a new country junior year of high
it
school.
was miserable, right? So, I mean, I will say, like, having talked about all the successes, right? I mean, of course, there's also been hardships along the way, right? I mean,
Exactly.
and there always is, and
Yeah.
I am who I am today because of a lot of the hardships.
Exactly.
Right? And that was probably one of the hardest things, right? Was dropping everything that I knew, right, to come to a new country. And like the one reason why it was so much harder is because I loved cricket, right?
Okay.
I mean,
Oh,
I
he was
almost
so
played
good.
like professionally.
Oh,
right?
wow,
That was
really?
my life.
Yes,
Wow,
he could have gone to
I did
world,
not know
like,
you played cricket.
That was
Amazing
like
cricketer.
that was like my life, right? That was
Okay.
my life there, and so of course, like moving, from Kenya to the U.S. where
Where
U.S.
there's no
cricket's
cricket
not that was like one of the hardest things, of course, to let go, right? That it leaves like a hollowness in you,
Uh-huh.
right? Because it's. I mean, that was.
Do you
Again,
think
right-
had you had not moved, you could have become a professional cricketer?
Yeah, I
Do you
think-
miss that? Do you sometimes think
I mean, I don't
about
miss
that?
anymore, but it took a long time to kind of
Let that go.
let that go.
Well, I have another thing that I want to say. So for me, right, I feel that a person who is dedicated and motivational, right, they can be, again, in my definition of success, they can be successful anywhere. For example, I don't know whether you know that there's a person called Hadi Sandhu. He's a Punjabi singer. He's very famous, and he wanted to be a cricketer, in the fact that in India he got selected in the under 16 team to represent India, but in under 19 team he did not get selected as a cricketer. Then he left the cricketing field, got into music industry, and right now he's one of the biggest singers in
Yeah.
India. So again, classic example, right? He wanted to pursue cricket. He was not, okay, again,
His
not
circumstances
successful
were a
because
bit different.
he's not able to play cricket in US, but he adapted his success and determination to be successful in the consulting field. That's why whenever he
Yeah.
saw an opportunity, right, to get into a managerial position or to
You
become a
applied.
director,
I love
he
that you applied.
That's what I always feel, that people who are successful and determined in the mind, right, know circumstance, like they know how to adapt as well. And I feel that's a clear indication that you adapted from Kenya to US.
But that adaptability came after a long time, right?
Okay.
I mean, when I first moved here, I didn't
yeah,
have
tell
that.
us about that.
When I didn't have that adaptability, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, I never had to adapt when I was in Kenya, right? Like life was just so on autopilot, right? The way things were, like I never had to adapt. I mean, just like didn't have to. I never really had to go and make new friends or like start anything from scratch, right? So the adaptability came in because I had to, right? Like I moved here. It's like dropping the whole cricket thing was hard, but then again, like moving from a British school system and basically a British system to a full blown like American school, your junior year is hard because
It's so hard.
because the problem is
College.
here, right? Because the problem here is that everyone goes through, it's zoned, right? So a lot of people, their junior year have been friends, right, from elementary.
Exactly,
yes, because you go to you're based on location. You
In the
keep
same
going to
place,
those
So
schools.
so the struggle is like you're an outsider, you don't know the system, you don't know anything.
fit in the clique.
Yeah, and so like it was like that was probably the hardest.
But you made
piece of
friends
it.
till today. You still. How did you make those
So
friends?
I did, right? So the first year, my junior year was like incredibly tough, right? Incredibly
Okay.
miserable. Like every day I wanted to go back, right? It was like it was
Uh-huh.
really miserable. Part of it was I didn't know how to go and make new friends. I didn't know
Okay.
how to like get out of my comfort zone. I hadn't, like I said, I'd never had to do that. But then I had to, of course. I mean, at some point, it's like
You need friends.
survive or die,
It's
right?
cool.
Again,
the mentality,
adaptability.
adapt, right?
Adapted,
So,
yeah.
so I had to adapt, right? When you have a choice to not adapt,
Uh-huh.
you take the choice not to adapt. But in this case, there was no choice. Like there was no going back to the comfort zone. So I had to, right? And so it got better over time. Like I found ways to like open up and like get out of my comfort zone. And then I was fortunate. My senior year, ended up just meeting someone who had common interests, Formula One and other
Uh-huh.
things, and kind of hit it off with him. And he already had a very close group of friends because they'd all been friends since elementary
So
school.
you got in the clique.
But yeah, and so through him, I was fortunate where I kind of got to meet everyone else, and then not very close to them in high school, but after high school is where we really spent a lot of time, right? Everyone went to different colleges, but like to this day, I've been a groomsman in all their weddings and,
Wow.
still spend time with them. So I was fortunate that happened. That helped, but again, high school was still a miserable experience
Oh,
in
high
general.
school is miserable. I will say I had the exact opposite experience. I went to elementary, middle, high school. I literally am not friends with anyone I went to school with. So I had a very different experience. But that's amazing, that you met people senior year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like that's again shows adaptability and the fact that he doesn't need validation. I think these are the main keys, successful reasons why he's successful. Like that is what people should pursue as well. But thank you so much, Zeeshan. This was an amazing
Yeah,
conversation
thank
with
you
you.
for having me.
I loved talking to you about like literally everything. See, consulting I wanted to talk to you about
Yeah,
because
yeah.
right now I feel that I'm like super. I understand what the consulting world is, and maybe if I want to like go and end up like creating a new startup for consulting, right? I probably can. I can hire you folks as well. But thank you so much,
Yeah,
Zeeshan. This was
thanks
an
for having
amazing
me.
conversation. This was another episode of Golan's Garage where we had yet an amazing person. We spoke to him about his life of his awesomeness. And if you feel anything interesting about his life, feel free to comment on the show. And like you can follow him on LinkedIn. I'll post the link here, and on Instagram, TikTok if he's there.
No
Yeah, he said
Instagram,
he's not.
no TikTok.
Then
Just
LinkedIn itself.
LinkedIn.
But
LinkedIn.
if you want to talk to him, just leave him a message on LinkedIn itself, and he'll reply back to you. Till
But
then,
if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm there.
obviously
Like my
her link will be here itself. But thank you so much, people, for joining in again. Till the next time, peace.
Thanks.
Yay!
That
Cut.
was so fun.